Welcome everyone to another Super Scientist. Today we're talking about the crazy Tycho Brahe. Your boy, you know him, you love him. This guy was a Danish guy, Mr. Brahe. We're gonna learn about this crazy guy, an astronomer born all the way back in 1546. So a long time ago. I have here 500 years before the cheese Danish was invented. If they were invented at that time, Mr. Brahe here would have dined on many cheese Danishes because he loved to eat, he loved to party, as we will see, as we will find out as we dig into his life and his work. One of the craziest stories, I want to share this before we dive into his discoveries. The craziest story of Tycho Brahe is in 1566 when he was studying at university, one of his many universities. He got into a fight with his third cousin, a guy named Manderup Parsberg, a totally real name. I did not make that up. Manderup Parsberg. With a name like that, I think this guy would fight with a lot of people. I mean, that would make sense to me. Anyway, he gets in a fight with his cousin here, and what were they arguing about? Well, they were arguing about who was the better mathematician. So, there you go. If you want to know about Tycho Brahe, there you go. He's always gloating and showboating and just being like, oh, I know more math than you, and I know about triangles and stuff, and Parsberg's like, no, I do, and they get in a crazy fight. So it actually gets kind of real here. They get in a fight over whatever, about their math and stuff, and they go Pirates of the Caribbean style. They have a sword duel, as mathematicians do in the late 1500s. This was in 1566, as I have here on my notes on the board. And so they have a big old sword fight, and Pirates of the Caribbean style, Mr. Brahe here, well, guess what? He gets a large section of his nose actually chopped off. And so he has to wear a brass nose for the rest of his life. All in the name of science and math. There you go. Mr. Brahe, the crazy Dane, as it were. So, pretty crazy. Okay, so I got the board all situated for us here. So, some of his first juicy discoveries were he actually discovered a new star in Cassiopeia. So Mr. Brahe here was always looking up, and he actually used, remember I said this is before telescopes, and he actually used these instruments called sextants and quadrants. And he may have used other instruments and devices as well. But when he was looking at like Cassiopeia, he noticed a new star that no one had seen before, and it created this kind of cool W. It kind of looks like a W. It's actually like a queen or something. Doesn't look like any queen I've seen, but that's fine. But it's a big like W in the sky. But he noticed a star on there, and he wrote down his notes and used his devices to find a new star. So that's cool there. And in 1560, this is a little bit earlier, but a solar eclipse actually piqued his interest in astronomy. So he, like many people, there's that kind of like seminal moment where it's like, oh wow, when you're young, and this is when he's only like, I think he's like 14 or 15 here. So before he dives into the universities and stuff, he sees the solar eclipse, which really just generates a lot of interest for him. He's like, oh my gosh, I gotta find out more. So there's some inspirational moments there. He also observed the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn early on in his career. This is kind of like one of his bigger early discoveries, because he noticed when he looked at the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, when he looked at the data of other astronomical tables and star charts, everything published before him, he noticed that, oh, these tables and stuff, they're not very accurate, because his measurements of Jupiter and Saturn when they were lined up with each other, he noticed that the data was quite a bit off in all the other published works that he had looked at. And so that was one of his seminal moments where he really wanted to make astute, detailed, accurate observations of the stars and the planets as much as possible. And conjunction in this case means not and or, but conjunction is like if we're here on Earth and we're looking out and we look in a straight line. Jupiter, let's say this is Jupiter here, and then we got Saturn over here. Not to scale, don't worry about it. Earth is not that big. But we got conjunction. When conjunction in the astronomical sense means objects that are lined up. So this happens to be when Jupiter and Saturn happen to be in line with one another. So Brahe's probably one of his big first initial pushes towards astronomy, when he started getting a reputation for his data and for his observations. He noticed the angles between these. He really looked at the data and got more and more accurate and precise measurements for that time. And so he's one of the first ones to really guide us on the path to a more accurate observation before telescopes. So pretty cool there. He also observed the comet of 1577 when lots of people were freaking out. They're like, oh, this comet, it's called the Great Comet 1577. Everyone's freaking out. They're like, oh, it's the end times or something, or what's going on, all this crazy stuff. And then Brahe's like writing down all this stuff in his notebooks. He's like, oh yeah, whatever. And he's just like, he jotted down the comet and he noted the path of its orbit. He also did realize this comet was actually way beyond the orbit of the moon, so he was actually very comforting to other people. There was no big mass media at the time or anything, but he was like, hey man, the orbit's like way out beyond the moon, so we're like totally okay and stuff like that. So kind of cool information on the comet of 1577. But that's another big detail of his that he noted and observed, and kind of discovered that comets actually are way beyond the path of the moon, so they posed no threat to us. Onward we go. Okay, so more about Brahe's amazing discoveries. So one of the seminal moments for his career, really probably other than his crazy sword fight, was in the 1570s, I believe 1572. King of Denmark, Mr. Frederick II, rewarded Brahe with Heaven and Uraniborg. What are these places? Well, Uraniborg kind of sounds like a prison on Cybertron or something, but it's actually a totally real place. Heaven was an island near Denmark, I believe. And Uraniborg is just the name that Frederick here gave to this this estate that he wanted to set up. He wanted to set up an observatory and an alchemy lab. Pretty cool. So he actually had a bunch of funds for Brahe, and at this point Brahe is really becoming a very noted astronomer and has made, for over a decade plus, like 15 years, done tons of observations and collected a bunch of data and star charts. And so his reputation is growing, and he's from a well-educated family as well. And so the king is like, hey, just go to this Uraniborg place and do more observations, do more studies. So he gets awarded that, so that's pretty cool. And also, I'm thinking this Frederick II probably wanted stars named after him or something, so, probably a little something with that too. That's still cool though. Anyway, so when Brahe goes up to Uraniborg, he gets this big estate built, and he holds a bunch of parties, and he's looking at the stars and all this crazy stuff. His biggest thing while he's there is he starts observing Mars a lot, and this really helped our boy Johannes Kepler, another super scientist. So they team up here in 1600, 1601. Let me see if I jotted that down. So this happened. Oh yeah, I have it here. Let me tell you. So in 1600, 1601, Kepler and Brahe formed this relationship, and there was some turmoil between them, but they also kind of were like buddies. They kind of sort of got along. Initially, Brahe didn't want to give over some of the data that he had. He was afraid that Kepler was going to steal it or something like that. But Kepler was a master mathematician, as we talked about, the true master mathematician. If him and Brahe got in a fight over their math, maybe he would have lopped his ears off or something too. I don't know. Anyway, Kepler's the math boy here, and he used all the observations that Brahe had accumulated with Mars. He really got very accurate data for that time about the position of Mars, where it was located, where it was going in the night sky. And he saw that, oh, it was over here. Now he can get the angle precisely. And having that data of the orbit of Mars really helped Kepler. There's actually a beautiful statue in Prague, a monument to both Kepler and to Brahe, a monument to their work together as two dudes that help science. So how about that? Pretty cool relationship in the history of science, actually, that those two came together. And if it wasn't for Brahe's detailed observations of Mars and all the other stars and planets, Jupiter and Saturn that we talked about as well, Kepler probably would not have developed his planetary laws of motion. So pretty crazy, pretty important stuff there. Later on in Brahe's career, he also developed, eccentric as he was, the party goer, the wine drinker and cheese eater. He developed his own model of the universe, combining heliocentrism and geocentrism. He could never square the Copernican model, the heliocentric model, with the Ptolemaic version of geocentrism. And he also really liked our boy Aristotle, who was wrong about everything. But he always tried to square away Aristotle's ideas on physics about the foundations of, like, there's a heavenly spheres that's untouchable and perfect. And that was really in line with geocentrism. And so he tried to combine both of them with all his observations. Because obviously he saw Jupiter and Saturn, he saw Mars, he saw that they were probably orbiting the sun. But he said that the sun and the moon orbit Earth. So he put Earth at the center, that basically, even though those other objects orbit the sun orbits us. That was his weirdo interpretation. So it was like a weirdo compromise. He didn't get in trouble for it. Maybe he wanted to be cool with the king or something. I don't know. But he was a big weirdo, and that was one of his big weirdo ideas. So. And that is all for our boy Tycho Brahe, the eccentric, crazy astronomer, the guy who made tons of foundational observations before the telescope, master observer of the stars, and helper of our boy Kepler. So that is all for Tycho Brahe. Thank you for watching, everyone. Super Scientist time. Let's go. Hit that sub sandwich button. See you next time.